Hi, welcome to a new episode of I Got a Lot of Things to Say. I'm here with our guest, Lindsey Freysinger. She's a disability advocate, and we're going to be talking about disabilities, racism in the medical world, and all the goofy things she does because I love a goof because I too am a goof. Lindsey, hi, welcome to the
Hi,
show.
thank you
How
for
are
having
you?
me. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Today's a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay. I love it when people have good days.
hmm
Um, Last week was rough for me, but I made it through, and this week is a little bit better. So, to get started, you are also on TikTok, like my first guest, Fatal Pros. How did you start making
You,
content on TikTok?
I started on TikTok. I got bored during the lockdown during COVID. I have incomplete quadriplegia from a car accident 10 years ago. I broke my neck in two spots at C5 and C6. So I have a spinal cord injury at C5, and that it's incomplete quadriplegia. So I have a um, some paralysis in all four limbs. So even though my right hand moves, my grip strength is super low. Just the strength of my arms, my ability to raise them up and things is not great. My left hand, this is the extent of its movement, which is still awesome considering the amount of damage that I had, but it also affects my diaphragm. And so because of that, and then also the muscles that are in between each of your ribs, they're called intercostal muscles. And those muscles help you breathe, and they help you to expand and contract your chest with the diaphragm, and they help you cough. Like when you cough, they help to
Yeah.
squeeze, and mine don't respond well. They're kind of spasmed all the time. So it's hard for me to get a super deep breath in, even without a respiratory illness. And you'll hear my voice throughout this. It'll get crackly like this, and that's part of my spinal cord injury. And so, because of that, COVID is something that is very dangerous for me. I'd likely end up on a ventilator. And at the beginning of COVID, they were rationing care. And there were quadriplegics that I know that were unable to get on ventilators because of the care rationing. So that led to, I lost a lot of friends at the beginning of COVID, a lot of people that I know in spinal cord injury support groups. I think like 4 or 5 people at the beginning, and those are people that I talk to on a regular basis. So it was really scary for me. And to deal with that anxiety, I needed kind of an escape. And so at first I got on TikTok just to kind of scroll and see what was going on. And then I started following some people with disabilities and seeing them doing just their normal life. And I was like, I should just post some videos of like me gardening, right? Or watering my plants. And so I would just take videos of me like weeding the yard in my wheelchair, or, planting in my garden or watering. And so for like the first year, I had like 200 followers, and, maybe it got up to 500. And I really wasn't looking to like grow an account or anything like that. And then I started hanging out in the comment section of a live. My friend Danny, who is now one of my best friends, was would be, on live every evening. And I was going through some insomnia at that time. I go in and out of having insomnia. And at that time I was having insomnia. So her and or them and my friend Khan, those two would go live together, and I would talk to them in the comment section, and they're like, we need to get you to 1,000 so you can come on live with us. So that was like, I started actually making content of me talking. And they're like, tell your story. People will be interested. Like, you're funny in the comments. Like, just be you, right? And so those two gave me the confidence really to start posting, and they started sharing my posts. And then within 2 weeks, I got up to 1,000 followers, and I started going to the debate lives at first,
Mhm.
because I thought, oh, I have some expertise in healthcare and stuff. And so I can come into these debate lives and offer my point of view from a healthcare perspective. And I quickly found out in a lot of these debate lives, I'm not going to say all of them, um, people like myself are not protected.
Mhm.
So if somebody comes in that has a viewpoint different than mine, the verbal abuse that was allowed, I was just like, you know, I may be friends with this host, but they're not protecting me during the live because it generates more views, right? If
Mhm.
there's people, and I am not someone that wants to get into a yelling match with somebody. No,
Right.
if you're not going to respect my, my two master's degrees and my doctorate in healthcare, and you're going to tell me that stuff, it doesn't matter. And like, I remember one day there was a man that worked in construction telling me that I was going in and oppressing men because I talked to the men in boardrooms at hospitals about the racism and ableism that runs rampant in healthcare. And it was really after that night that I was just like, nope, I'm not giving these hosts my like intellectual and emotional labor, and then only getting like feeling abused out of it, feeling like invalidated and all that stuff. And so now that I've gone away from the debate lives, like the lives that I go to are very much centered on like healing, finding inner peace, you know, those kinds of things, because I'm a healer. Like that's really who I am at my core. And then that led me to becoming an advocate, because I started seeing, oh, there's all these gaps between the disability or chronic pain community, which I'm a part of, and the healthcare community, which I'm a part of. And so
Right.
I can speak both languages
Right.
and translate. And so that's really what got me like involved online in advocacy. And then when people saw that, I started having people reach out to me like, hey, I'm having this issue with a doctor, or they put this in my record and this is not true. And how do I go about getting this expunged from, my medical records? Or how do I go about talking to a physician about my suspicions that I have X, Y, or Z condition, right? And so a lot of times I'm helping people, find the research articles to take to the doctor, or I'm going with them on the phone, like as a FaceTime advocate. I call it, Karen in your pocket. Like just bring me in, and I will talk to those doctors, and I will go up the chain of command if necessary. And I know how to do that because of not only my experience as a nurse, but my doctorate is in systems, populations, and leadership. So I know how to go up the chain of command, and I have a lot of networking that I'll often know people who are higher ups, who are the chief, nursing officers and stuff. And so I'll either know them or my father will know them because he runs hospitals. So,
That's that is really awesome. I don't know how I came across your content, but um I've been doing a lot of deconstructing of a lot of things. Like I said previously, and I said in my previous episode, I am neurodivergent. I have ADHD, and it's a really good chance. I haven't been formally diagnosed, but there's a very good chance that I'm on the autism spectrum too, which makes a lot of sense for a lot of
mhm,
things for how I view certain things, um, things that I did as a kid that I still kind of do, that may be kind of off kilter. Um, but my first diagnosis was with ADHD. And I also have chronic depression. I have generalized anxiety disorder. I have CPTSD. I have all the acronym mental health diagnoses. It's longer than a
The full
CVS receipt.
alphabet, right?
The full alphabet, to the point where it's like, I don't really want another diagnosis. So you know what? If you think I have autism, okay, but I'm not going to get diagnosed because I don't want, no, it's a CVS receipt right now. Like, I don't need any more. I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah.
But one of the things I had to, because I've been depressed since I was a kid.
Hmm.
I've just kind of been a sad child. um, and I started going to therapy in high school, and it really wasn't effective. And that was in the 90s. So in the 90s, I felt like mental health was kind of in the beginning stages of, no, you're not crazy. This is something that's a health condition, just like asthma, just like heart disease, but I'm Black. And in the Black community, it was still like, oh, we don't do that. We just pray about it. And I'm like, well, I've been praying about it since I was about 7 or 8, and I still have it. So the prayer ain't working. Can we do something else? And so I had to kind of navigate that and navigate my own household ideals about what mental health was. Um, I had a grandmother who also had mental health issues that we really didn't talk about a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and I knew sometimes she got really sick because I would go see her during the summer. I would just stay with my grandparents for the summer, and my mom would pick me up on the weekends.
Hmm.
And some some summers I couldn't go, and I couldn't really understand like why. And they would just be like, "Well, she's sick," and I'm like, "Okay, well, what does that mean?" Like no one told me until I got older. And I'm like, oh, so some of my mental health issues are probably hereditary. Um, and some of them are due to trauma. And one of the things I had to start realizing is that I'm disabled, because when
Hmm.
you think about a disabled person, we really are looking at people like you, people like Crutches and Spice. We're not looking at people like me because, well, you can hold a job and you can do that. And I had to deconstruct the whole, yeah, you do have a disability, and some of the things you say and some of the way you think is ableist, and you shouldn't be ableist because whether you want to or not, regardless of what other people tell you, you are now part of this community. And the people who have visible disabilities kind of get the brunt of like the inspirational, which
Yep.
gives me the
Inspiration porn. Yep.
inspiration porn, which kind of gives me
Hmm.
the ick. And I think that's one of the reasons I really, really like you and Crutches and Spice, because yes, you're a quadriplegic, but that is not the totality of you as a person. And you
Hmm.
really show who you are as a person. Like, you're funny as hell. And I'm just be like, how the hell did she? That's funny. I mean, it's kind of inappropriate, but it's funny as hell. Like, because it's
I'm
almost,
super inappropriate, but
but
I want to normalize like laughing with us. Like we're normal human beings that have ridiculous stuff that goes on in our lives because of disability. And hell, like if if I can use myself as material to get people to have like a smile on their face, that, to me, laughter and smiling is part of healing, right?
oh
It's
yes,
it's a huge part of healing. And if I can make people smile and feel comfortable in my presence and know that, like, if there's conflict or something, I'm probably going to approach it with some humor. Like, I'm probably like, that's just how I approach things with everyone. Like, even my husband, him and I don't fight because half the time I'm just laughing. I'm just like, this is so ridiculous. I can't even be mad right now, Like,
And I think
I just find the humor in
and
everything.
everything. And I'm kind of like that too. So one of the things I kind of started doing was making jokes about my depression, making jokes about me having anxiety disorder. And I wasn't going to bed. I couldn't sleep. I too have insomnia. And I'm also on medication for my ADHD, which they say it's extended release. That medicine lasts in my system for like 24 hours.
Mhm.
And I'm on Adderall, and I'm on a very low dose of it too. If I take my Adderall at 8 a.m. in the morning, I'm still wired up at 3 a.m. like, I think I'm gonna wash the dishes and vacuum my floor and change my sheets. And it's like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You live in an apartment. You can't do that if you don't go lay down and scroll through TikTok. So I am on TikTok sometimes 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep either.
Mhm.
So and sometimes we'll run into each other. It's like
Yeah.
you'll be like, "Yeah, I can't sleep." This was really funny.
Yeah.
Um, so I just started the one of the ways I kind of started deconstructing my ableism was making a joke about me having depression, me having ADHD, um, me having all the things like my CVS receipt of diagnoses, like
Right.
because I am not all these things. I can do a plethora of other things, and I am not just this.
Right.
And I think it's really important that we kind of put the emphasis of, because I don't want to be inspiration porn. I don't want
Mhm.
people to go. And the reason why I think the reason why it gives me the ick so much is because it's kind of rooted in pity and rooted in oh my God, I'm so glad it's not me. Like, I don't have to go through that. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's very rooted in fear. It's
mm-hmm,
very fear-based is what I found, is that a lot of the ableism that I encounter is people telling me their fears. Is what at least that's what I've gotten out of it, is like when somebody, sees me, because like I can stand up from my wheelchair. I'm not super stable, but I can stand up. I can take some steps with some crutches. Again, not super stable, but I can do that. And I almost make a point of not doing that too much on my TikTok, because when I was on Facebook, especially after my accident, it was just a constant barrage of people only interacting and only being excited about me regaining movement. There was no excitement about like adapting, or, especially when I stopped using my crutches as much because I'd fallen so many times and hit my head a few times. And I'm like, I want to keep this brain. So that's when I switched to wheelchair full time. And the the amount of just like almost sorrow that people had, that like I had given up on walking. No, no, no. I did not give up on walking. I recognized the danger to my brain and said, I don't need to walk to be a full human. I can use my wheelchair full time. And I have the crutches still. My husband uses them when his hip hurts. And then I use them occasionally when I go into a house, like a friend's house that isn't accessible. Um, but that, anymore, I don't use my legs to get around unless I have someone with me, because I've knocked out my front teeth, I've gotten stitches. Like, it is just, I I don't need to be doing that for the sake of looking or appearing more able-bodied.
And
This, my chair is my freedom.
and it's funny that you said that, like people, it's coming from a place of fear, because I think that's where my ableism was coming from. It was not so much a place, it was a place of fear, but it was also this, I want to be normal. I just want to be normal. I want to be normal. I have always felt really out of place, never really fitting in. My brain, it doesn't work like everyone else's brain. And me thinking things and saying things, and people are looking at me like that was really kind of inappropriate, where I'm just like, okay, but that was the truth. Like, how am I supposed to? And that could be part of the ASD, because I'm just like, well, it's not inappropriate to me if it's just facts. Like, the fact is this, this, this. And people would go, well, that's inappropriate. You can't say that. And so I spent a lot of time masking symptoms. I spent a lot of time trying not to be. And I don't think that people understand how truly exhausting it is to mask. I don't think people understand how truly exhausting it is to, okay, I have to try to fit in. And if I don't say anything, then she's stuck up and she thinks she's better than everybody else, which also happened to me. And that came in with a little bit of the whole light skin, dark skin, Black people issue, because I look like this. And so, and it's like, I don't think I'm better than you. I'm just trying not to get in trouble. So I'm just not saying nothing. I don't think I'm better than you. I'm just, every time I say something, people get upset. So I'm just gonna be quiet. That's it. And people not understanding that, not understanding why I'm doing certain things. And so because I have a disability for a very long time, I was like, well, I don't want any accommodations. I just want to be normal. And I think a lot of people, like when you said they wanted me to move, they didn't care about adapting. It's like I would have been one of those people who would have been like, but you should keep going. Whereas now, because I've grown and learned so much, I'm just like, you got an accommodation? Or
Yeah.
you've learned to adapt, because I'm also currently at 47 doing the exact same thing. I am learning to adapt to my disabilities, because it is a disability. I could go on disability if I want to. It is a disability. I qualify for a service dog. I think I'm gonna get one. And it's like, no, these are accommodations that are afforded to you because you have a disability. It does not mean anything else. It doesn't mean anything, but what you have is a chronic condition. And when my therapist told me this and she put it in this way, it really kind of made sense. She said chronic means you will be managing it for the rest of your life. We do not have a cure for ADHD. We do not have a cure for depression. We do not have a cure for anxiety. All we have is manage it. You're always going to be depressed. You're always going to have anxiety. You're always going to have ADHD. So there is no quick fix. What you have to do is learn to manage all of these. And it's going to be a combination of things. It's going to be medication. It's going to be therapy. It's going to be journaling. It's going to be yoga. It's going to be meditation. It's going to be a whole plethora of things. It may be I may have to go on disability for a little bit. It may be I'm going to have a job. I'm only going to have a part-time job. So that means you may not be able to make as much money as a neurotypical person or a non-disabled person, which that we could do a whole other show about the how the government, everybody kind of want disabled people to be like broke, and we could do a
Yeah.
whole other show on that, and we will. You're going to come
Oh,
back and we're going to do a whole show
yeah.
on
My friend
that.
Arena and I have had discussions because she survived cancer and is working on getting on Social Security right now. And it's taking such a long time. We've been talking about, like, she'll text me and be like, I feel like the government just is trying to push it out until the cancer comes back, right? Until like un until she's not gonna live much longer. Like, and I was like, oh yeah, the government doesn't want us to survive. They don't want us to survive because we have to depend on them for income. So of course
Hmm.
they don't want us to survive. No, like we're expensive.
Right. And I think for people like me, I think that's why too, for like mental chronic illnesses, we get a lot of, well, just kind of suck it up, just try to do whatever, because I think a lot of people do know we're kind of considered as a discarded group.
Yep.
Like, one of the things that really opened my eyes was Crutches and Spice. And for viewers, if you don't know who Crutches and Spice is, she's all over the social media. Go follow her. It's
Hmm.
important.
Yeah.
So follow her and Lindsey. So, because Lindsey, you'll have a good time, but you'll learn a lot too. But also follow Crutches and Spice. She said something that I never even thought about. She was like, a lot of evacuation plans, and when we talk about fire drills and evacuating people, there are no plans for how to get a physically disabled person out of the building,
Yep.
to the point where some people are like, we just have to leave them in there. And I'm like, what do you mean leave them in there? Like, if you mean leave a human being in a building that is burning because you couldn't figure out a way to get them out? And I'm sure there are very cost effective, economical ways to get someone out of a building that may not be able to walk out of the building. And you mean to tell me, yeah, they just say you leave them there or whatever.
Yep. And that's where a lot of times the plan is that you have friends. Like the plan is that you've made friends with people that you work with and they care enough about you that three of them are going to work together to carry you out. Because yeah, there isn't a plan for us. And so we know that. And like I'm home alone a lot right now. I'm home alone. All of my neighbors know that I'm home alone during the day, and all of them have my phone number and I have theirs. And all of them are aware that if I call, it's because I need them to come over and help me, usually off the floor. Because if I fall, I can't get up on my own into my chair. So I have, Cooper and Brenda and this is where allies come in, right? This is
Hmm.
where I literally I live out in the country, like on 5 acres. So it's not like I can yell from my house and someone can hear
Right.
me. Um, so like it and then our house used to only have one ramp, and we put a second ramp out of my bedroom so that I have two escape routes. Because before I'd have to go all the way through the house to escape. And, we've had times where like somebody has left the coffee pot on the stove on low, and then I wake up to like smoke in the house. And I'm just like, guys, you can't burn the house down with me
Right.
in it, okay? Um, so yeah, both my mom and my husband have ADHD, and so it's great type A kind of personality.
Hmm.
So we work well together because I'm able to keep things very organized and stuff. But then occasionally their ADHD will get me, and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, you guys! Like,
Like
what are
the
you
coffee
doing?"
pot.
Yeah,
I
yeah, like
solved
a
my
coffee
coffee
pot.
pot. I solved that for me. It's not a Keurig, but it's like a Keurig. And so and it can do regular coffee, like you don't have to do coffee pods. And
Hmm.
so with that, once it stops brewing, it cuts itself off. So I never have
Yeah.
to worry about, because I've done that once where I left my coffee pot on and there was nothing in it, and it like shattered, and I was like, oh my God, what is that? And I was like, oh,
Hmm.
my bad.
Yep.
Because one of the things that I am noticing now, when I was masking, I would check things two, three, four times. And as I stopped masking and stopped doing all of that, I noticed that my ADHD things slip. I'll leave something on and I'll be like, oh, I left that on. So sometimes I'll still double check. I'm always checking the stove. I'm always checking. I have an air fryer now. I'm always checking the air fryer. I'm always checking. But because I'm not masking as much as I used to, I don't check.
The pet
You have
snake.
a snake?
Uh-huh. Yeah, he's a ball python. He's 5 years old.
Okay, so my mother really does not like snakes. And
Hmm.
I kind of developed her fear of snakes. And then one day we went to the park and there was a guy there with a snake. And we started talking to him and he let me like touch it. And I was like, oh, this isn't bad. Like,
Hmm.
this isn't as bad as I thought. They're kind of cute. He's a little bit cold, but that's okay. And, you know, that kind of helped with my fear.
Yeah, they're really
I,
smooth. They're not
yes,
slimy at all. They're like, and their ball pythons and boas are pretty awesome because they're really chill snakes. Like they don't move really fast. Like
yeah.
my ball python never strikes at me. The only thing he strikes at is his food. Um, and like the girls are 3 and 5 years old, and they
Hmm.
can sit on the bed and play with him for an hour and not have any issues with the snake. So,
I think the Bible is why snakes get a bad rap. Personally,
yep,
I think it's a Christian thing. Like,
yep.
I think that. So, but that's really cool that you have see cool. Um, that was one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show. I want to dispel this idea that people who have disabilities, and I always say physical disabilities because with a mental disability, you don't know someone has it unless they tell you they have it.
Yep.
And so when we talk about disabilities, and I think when society talks about disabilities, they really are talking about you. They really
Hmm.
are talking about crutches and spice. They're talking about someone I physically can see that they are disabled. And I love the fact that both of you go, I'm a human being with different interests and multifaceted. I just happen to need a wheelchair. I
Hmm.
just happen to need crutches. But, I feel like society thinks that all disabled people should be frumpy people that like carry Bibles and should be so thankful and grateful for people wanting them to exist in the world. It's like, oh, you want me to exist? I'm so grateful. And I'm like, no. Like, if you take up space in the world as a neurotypical person who doesn't need an accommodation, then these people also deserve to take up space in the world too.
Hmm.
And I feel I'm kind of upset with myself that I had to use my own disability to kind of get to that point. But
Hmm.
I'm glad that I got to that point
Yeah.
because I follow you. Yes, you do a lot of advocacy, and thank you for gathering the white women in the Black people comment spaces. We need more white women like you because, woo child. Anyway, um, and it's like, no, yes, Lindsay's a quadriplegic, but Lindsay does this, and Lindsay's funny. Lindsay now I find out has a snake. Who knew? Um, and it's like they're human beings, and I feel like when you start to connect with someone and go, you know what, you're a human being that just happens to need an accommodation, which I've always had that. I kind of always had that. My aunt is deaf. I have an aunt who is deaf. She taught me sign language at like 3. I still
It's
don't know
awesome.
I still don't know a lot of signs. I still know the alphabet. And so I try to learn sign language and learn signs so I can talk to her.
Hmm.
It When I was younger, I didn't feel any different around my aunt. She had all these accommodations. And you would think that because I saw that, I wouldn't have felt so ableist, especially with my own ailments. But you still, because of society, you still kind of grow up with this dissident of this disconnect of, well, my aunt is different and special and
Hmm.
everybody else is this. My aunt drives a car. My aunt has a job. My aunt got married. My aunt had kids. All of them are hearing. Her and her husband are deaf, but all of her kids are hearing. Taught her kids sign language as babies. All of them knew how to sign, like fluent. That's another language that
Hmm.
people don't realize. Like if you know ASL and English, you're bilingual in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And people would say the most asinine things about deaf people, and I'm like, my aunt's deaf, and that's not true. Because the main thing is, well, how do they dance and how do they drive a car if they can't hear? I was like, well, there's a placard that my aunt has that says she's deaf. So if you're a cop trying to pull her over, you're gonna need the sirens and the whole shebang because she can't hear. I was like, they hear the vibration of the beat in the speaker. That's how they hear the beat. I was like, they can do. I said it's just an accommodation. They can do anything any one of us do. They just need accommodation for it. But I still, even with saying that and advocating for my aunt and other people who were deaf and hard of hearing, I still was like, but I'm gonna pray mine away and suck it up and it's like, nah, boo, you and your aunt, same person, different disability. You're in the same group, different disability. You need accommodations just like your aunt needs accommodations. And
Yeah.
my aunt doesn't sit there and feel bad because she needs accommodations. She's just like, I need an interpreter. I need this. Like,
Right. Like this stuff isn't going to get done. Like
right.
if I don't have a wheelchair, I'm not getting to the appointment. So like make sure I have a wheelchair. Make sure make sure I have transportation of some kind, you know? Like there are things that like yeah, you get very used to that accommodation. This is a funny story. So when my husband and I first started dating, I remember like the first couple times we would go out and like go shopping and stuff, he would afterwards be like, "Oh my gosh, did you notice all the people staring?" And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm at crotch level. Like I don't see people's eyes. Like, like I'm so low. Like I notice people's flies open. Like that's my superpower is I can see anyone who has a fly open. And so it took him time and now he doesn't notice at all anymore, right? But when he was first with me, he was self-conscious about it, but we talked about it, which was great. And I told him like, yeah, I went through that in the beginning of my injury, like literally paying attention to people paying attention to me. And then I realized like that doesn't feel good. I'm gonna pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to what I'm doing. Like I didn't care what people thought of me before. Why do I care now? Like and yeah, it really I remember when I first became disabled, I still say this, as a nurse, I was horrified to find out how little I knew about disability. Um, I, and it really that's really what drove me to go get my master's and my doctorate was there needs to be people with disabilities speaking about disability in healthcare, like that are healthcare providers or have been healthcare providers. Like I'm forcibly retired from my license, right? Because I'm not going to practice nursing at the bedside with my disability. So there's no reason for me to have a nursing license right now, but I still do community health initiatives in my town that are very much disability and disability focused and also focused on, meeting the needs of our most marginalized in the community. We are in an orchard area in Oregon. So like the Oregon pears that people get, the apples that come out of here, trying to think, there's cherries. Yeah, apples, cherries, and pears are the big ones out of here, and then wine. And because of that, we have a huge migrant population. And so like this summer, one of the big things that I was part of is we have a fire season every summer where the air quality is awful because we have smoke, so much smoke in the air. And there are people that live in homes that don't have air filtration systems. And so we got a group of volunteers together and built air filtration systems with a fan and, making it's called a Corsi Rosenthal box. But
Yes,
we made, let's see, I think we were able to make 65 of them this year, whereas last year we only made 20. So like every year we're getting more.
yeah,
So we were able to make 65 and supply those to 65 families that had somebody that either had asthma or COPD and didn't have a great filtration system. And so we were able to prevent people from then needing to come to the hospital in respiratory distress. So
that
it took
that's
some
awesome.
of the, stress off of our small hospital, but it also kept community members healthy and kept them from having any, medical trauma. Because every time that you access the healthcare system, there is a, a potential for medical trauma. And so anytime we can minimize that and prevent having to interact with a system that we all know is broken, all of us that work in it know it's broken. And so preventative medicine and these community health initiatives and looking at environmental factors is just so important to our overall community health. Other things that I'm a part of is like a community garden that we have here. And during the summer, there's a small farmers market in the tiny town here, and then there's a bigger one down in the bigger town. But the one in the tiny town is anything that's left over from the community garden is then sold, and then that money is put towards seeds and equipment for keeping the
To
garden
maintain it.
going. Yeah. And so that garden has been, I mean, I didn't start when the garden started, but I just came in and said, hey, let me help out. Like, how can I help out? And so one of the things I do is I send out emails to people. Like, I do a very small part of it because I'm not out there gardening with them. It's not an accessible garden. Um, but that is my dream, is to one day have part of my yard be an accessible community garden, because I want there to be an area where people with disabilities could maybe come and
Mhm.
get their hands in the dirt, you know?
Right, because again, your disability should not mean that you can't. I mean, of course, certain things you're not going to be able to do when you have
Right,
a disability, but it shouldn't mean that you are so limited that you only do a few things.
right.
Because what I've noticed is that with doing certain things, it doesn't mean a disabled person can't do it. It means they don't have really the accommodation to do it. So
Yep.
I think that's like really awesome. And to go back to something you said that made me think of the intersection between like disability advocacy and race,
Hmm.
because a lot of people don't realize that that's connected in a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
ways.
ableism is right. Like ableism and racism are like little sisters. They go hand
Mhm.
in hand.
So,
And
um, and I know you've talked some about like you had to kind of learn to be anti-racist
mhm.
yourself. So, how did that start?
You know, I would say like it probably really my anti-racism journey probably started when I was a volunteer in an emergency room when I was in high school and started having contact with people outside of my white suburban neighborhood. And in those interactions and stuff, I started realizing like, things are not how like how I've been taught. These stereotypes aren't fitting all the time. Like I'm working with a black nurse that's one of the smartest women I've ever met. Like, and so as those things started kind of breaking down that like white supremacist construct that had been, indoctrinated into me to be the perfect little white girl, to uphold that system. First thing was, going like full on, I'm not buying into patriarchy. Like that was at a very young age, probably 14. I left the church at 14 because I kept getting in arguments in catechism. So I got kicked out of catechism.
Wait,
And
are
I
you
was,
Catholic too?
no, I'm Lutheran. I was
Oh,
raised
okay.
Lutheran, which is
Because
Catholic light.
like,
Yeah.
right, because we have catechism. I'm Catholic and was actually a catechism teacher for like 20 years, but that's
Yeah.
another story.
Yeah.
But keep going.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so I challenged my catechism teacher on a lot of things. And because I would continue challenging, I ended up getting kicked out. And I told my mom the reason that I got kicked out, and it was because I just kept asking questions about where do women fit in? Like, there's no women with jobs. There's no women, like, my mom works full time and raises her kids. Like, this, none of this is making sense with what I'm seeing my mother do. And she's not
Right.
fitting into what you're telling us. So, so like when I went to my mom and told her about what I was thinking, she was just like, I don't want my daughters thinking that they have to fit in a box. Like, no, I want my daughters feeling empowered and independent. And so we were going to school there, and she took us out of that school and put us into public schools and allowed us to deconstruct from Christianity with her. She was just like, yeah, this isn't serving my daughters. I don't like this.
That's
And,
awesome.
part of it is that she wasn't really raised in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So, she started going to church, with my dad. And so when that happened, she was just like, yeah, no, this is not good for our girls. And we're not going to keep this up. So that was great. So like, the deconstruction process, I think, is so, um, interesting when you're talking from like a white woman perspective, especially from the church, because it usually starts with you leave the church, you start deconstructing from that, then you deconstruct from patriarchy, and
Mm-hmm.
then and then a lot of women stop. A lot of white women stop there, and they're white feminists, and they're dangerous when they stop there. And luckily for me, I had some amazing Black women that were my professors. And so they worked anti-racism teaching into some of my schooling. And because of that, it started to get me to think about listening to Black women and putting that at the forefront. So like reading books by Black women. So that's when I started reading Bell Hooks, was when I was in my undergrad. And then getting onto TikTok gave me this access to people just sharing their lived experiences. And I was already at the place of, I don't argue with people about their lived experience.
Right.
I listen and I validate and I say, wow, that must be like, even if it's something I can't relate to, I can say, that sounds really hard. Like, or that sounds really awful. Like, I can't imagine going through that because I haven't. But that doesn't mean that like I'm going to sit there and say, no, that didn't happen to you.
Right.
Like, because I don't want anyone doing that to me. So why would I do
Exactly.
that to someone else? And so when I see white women doing that, I'm just like, you realize that you're acting like a white man right now. Like, you're doing the thing that you don't like that white men do to you. You're doing it
Right.
right now to Black women or this Black, like, why? And it's the venting of the white violence because, they don't feel empowered to stand up to white men. And so then they're lashing out in this way that they find appropriate under white supremacy. And it's a really disgusting thing to witness as a white woman. It makes me very sad for other white women to know that they are that unhappy and unhealed and just like, I mean, they have to be miserable, like really, to be talking like that.
It's so first of all, I was born and raised and live in Washington, D.C. In 1976, when I was born, D.C. was like 84, 85 something percent Black. So I had a very unique experience of seeing people that looked like me doing all manners of things. They were in the government, they were attorneys and teachers and bus drivers. It was just all socioeconomic strata. And so I'm Catholic and I went to Catholic school. My elementary school, which was Catholic, had a Black principal, Black vice principal. The faculty was Black, the administration was Black, and the kids were Black, which I did not know was a not true experience for a lot of Black people, because I just happened to live somewhere where most of the people here were Black. So seeing Black people everywhere was not this big thing like, whoa. And so it wasn't until I became an adult and I was like, yeah, someone put, I think on Twitter, and yes, I'm dead naming Twitter until Elon can properly name his daughter her name. Anyway, I was on Twitter and someone put, what was the age, how old were you when you had your first Black teacher? And there were people, mostly Black people answered. They were like high school, college. Some said never.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? And then I came in, I was like, from 4 to 12. And they were like, what do you mean from 4 to 12? I said I went to elementary school. All my teachers were Black. All the kids
Wow.
were Black. The only person that was involved with my school that wasn't Black was the priest. I said, but everybody else was Black. And I was like, I didn't realize that y'all were like, this was like an anomaly. And so I didn't realize too the blatant racism that is in certain places, because even now we kind of don't have a majority. We're like, Black people in DC right now are like 49%. But you still see a lot of Black people everywhere. And I'm just like, and so I didn't really grow up with a lot of racism, overt racism. Like, no one has ever said the N-word to me to my face. Like, I'm actually waiting so I can just punch him in the face. But no one has done that, partially because of where I live and partially because of how I look. Because a lot of people go like, oh, she's not Black, she's something else. No, I'm Black. I'm just white. It's okay. But I did not realize the blatant racism and all the things that white people believed until I got on TikTok. And I was like, where the fuck are you from? Have you never met a Black person before? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Well, we don't have Black people. Okay. Whose fault? That's not my fault. But
Right.
who told you all this stuff about? It just blew my mind, because I'm like, as Black community, we don't go around and talk about white people like I feel white people talk about us. Like, we just have better things to do. And I'm
Right.
like, do y'all like sit around like a campfire and like discuss us ad nauseum? Like, what is going on? And the amount of white women just acting a fool in people's comments. It's like, well, we're not all like that, but you're acting like the people you claim you're not like.
Right. You're
Just by
proving the
this
point right now.
you're
Yeah.
proving the point. And so it was kind of nice to see other white women going, nah, we're not going to do this right now. Like, it was almost like the internet version of grabbing them by the ear and pulling them out of the room. Like, no, we're not gonna do this.
Yep.
And so, um, and I became mutuals with a lot of creators who were kind of like that. And I was just like, wow, I mean, I knew that America was racist. Like, I knew that. My mother went to a segregated Catholic school. Sounds like a big oxymoron, but here we are. Um, so I knew that racism was alive and it existed and all that. But sometimes I think I'm still in 1950 when I go on
And
TikTok.
yeah, and if you visit certain parts of America, especially like, so I live in Eastern Oregon. My husband and I will go to like some of the old West towns out here, and it is like stepping back in time. The people who lived there have not left the 1950s yet. And so, like, I tell people all the time, like, Oregon is not a safe state.
I've heard that.
The state itself was set up as a white supremacist state. They they outlawed enslavement from the beginning, and it wasn't because they had a moral objection to it. It was because they wanted the state to be all white. And so that mentality is still out here. There are families around me that are descendants of some of the original settlers out here. And
Mm.
like, and then they tell me stories that I'm like, that's the whitewash version. I'm gonna go look that up. You know, that's the whitewash version of what happened. Oh, you guys met under an oak tree and had and made some agreements with the tribes in the area.
Okay.
Let me go to the source. Let me go to the tribe and go read what actually happened and like what your great grandfather actually did.
And it's funny
And
because everyone thinks of Oregon like it's Portlandia and it's just Portland and that's it. Like even me. Like
mhm,
I actually knew like a long time ago that Portland was set up as a white supremacist state. Like I knew that. And I was just like, well, maybe they've grown out of it. And I had to go, you know how like there are places in Maryland you can't go either, Kia, that you know Oregon's the same way. It's not a small, tiny little state. It's very big. And Portland is just a city in a big state.
mhm,
And even I
yeah.
think Portland has their issues too. It's like not
Oh
all
yeah. Yeah. They have
utopia Mecca out there.
no, I mean you talk to any Black person that lives in Oregon, in the Portland area, in this area, they'll tell you it is alive and well out here and very prevalent. I actually, um, this is not something I talk about on TikTok much, but my husband and I years ago had a kid at the school emergency guardianship over him because there were just some issues with his adoptive parents that like legal issues that they had to deal with. And so he needed a place to stay. And he is 6'2", 280 pounds and Black in Oregon. And he was a teenager when he came to us, but looked like a grown man. And
Right.
so that was one of the things that launched me into like starting to really pay Black women to help guide me because I'm like I need to know how to keep him safe here. Like he grew up here. He knows how to keep himself safe in certain ways, but I need to know what I need to do
Right.
when I'm around him because just my presence around him could put him in danger if people
Right.
don't understand that this is at this point, it's like a mother son type relationship. He started calling me mom at one point, and so we very much, and he comes home all the time. But, I had to, I did a lot of one-on-one sessions with different women that have children that, have had Black sons. And I'm like, tell me what I need to do. right? Like, tell me
Right.
what I need to do, and I will pay for you to tell me what I need to do, but I need to keep him safe. And I need to know, like, how to talk to him about certain things, especially when he was moving out on his own, how to, different things that I wouldn't think of doing, right? That he's going to need to do in order to keep himself
Right.
safe. And so,
Basically, you needed to learn how to navigate the talk that all Black parents have with their Black kids. The same talk that I had with my parents, with my mom at a certain age. And it's funny how white people don't have that talk because
right.
racism affects you too. It's
Yep.
not just it negatively impacts us more directly, but it also negatively impacts you too. And so it's like y'all don't sit around and talk about race. And so, oh, no wonder when the little white kid sees the Black kid for the first time, they're in shock and awe, want to grab hair and that. Funny story. My goddaughter took ballet lessons, and the ballet play the where they took the lessons was in a Black neighborhood. But I think it was like whatever ballet company, Washington Ballet, I think, put it on. So there was a little kids class that was smaller than her, and it had Black kids, Black girls, white girls in it. All the white girls act like they ain't never seen a Black child a day in their life and was touching the braids and oh my goodness. And I'm sitting here like, and I'm looking at their parents like, so y'all don't have no Black friends? Like your kids don't play with Black kids? Like your kids act like they ain't never seen a Black person in real life before. Like, what is going on? Like, what? And then I found out that a lot of white people don't have diversity of friends,
Hmm.
but Black
Yeah.
people do.
Yeah.
Like,
And see, when you tell me stories like that, it like makes me wonder if I, as a child, did those things, right? Because I was very much raised in that indoctrination. And
you know what? I give white kids a pass. I do. I give white kids a pass because you don't know. I was just thinking about this today as I was getting ready for our podcast. Um, this is my hair. This is how it grows out of my head.
Mhm.
And all kids, regardless of race, will ask me, "Can I touch your hair?" And I'm just like, "Yeah," because I don't care. But you ask. And even with white kids, "Well, can I touch your hair?" Yeah. Oh, it's so pretty. I mean, it's never like a bad thing. It's always it's pretty, it's soft, like, "Oh, this is what it feels like. I didn't know." But it amazes me how all the little white kids know to ask permission, but all the white adults just put their hands in my hair like, and
Yeah,
I've had to literally physically assault some white people because I was like, I didn't I didn't say you could touch me,
right.
and this is assault, and get the fuck away from me. What are you doing?
Yeah, yeah,
But so I kind of give a pass to white kids, but I could see how you're like, oh my gosh, did I do that as a child?
mhm,
Because that that was I was that kid.
right. Yep, yep. And it's one of those things that, like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty, like all of those things. It's just like, huh, I wonder if I did that as a kid and caused like some pain for another child, right? Like something that they
Hmm.
had to unpack. And so that then reminds me that I need to keep on this journey, right? Like I need to keep doing this because, and even when I talk about nursing and stuff, I'm all about harm reduction. And
Right.
so if I can reduce my harm footprint, because just my existence as a white woman causes, right, because of the white supremacy structure, it puts Black women and Black men in danger, just like my existence in spaces with Black people, like that kind of thing. And so um, it just it just tells me that like this is my duty as a white woman to keep this up, to keep reducing any harm that I cause. And when it's brought to my attention that something's harmful, like at one point I used the phrase tone deaf, and
Hmm.
somebody said, "Hey, in the deaf community, we're asking people to not use that anymore because that's ableist. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Thank you. Like, because the last thing I want to do is harm someone from
Harm
my own
somebody.
community, you know,
Right.
or like if I do come in to correct a white woman in, you know, a black person's comment section, and that person then comes to me and says, hey, like the way you did that is actually going to make them like be worse towards me, or, you know, it's going to activate them to be more violent. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, thank you for telling me that this could cause potential harm. And again, I'm going to bring things back to nursing because I do that a lot. I like to use analogies, but in nursing, we make mistakes. We're human, right? I've made medication errors with every intention of giving the right medication at the right time to the right patient. I've made errors and they were not intentional, but they still had the potential to cause harm or caused a small bit
Right.
of harm, right? And at that point, it is my duty to take accountability for the fact that I made a mistake. I caused harm. I hurt you. I didn't
Right.
mean to hurt you, but I hurt you. And now I'm going to take the necessary steps of, you know, for nursing, it's an incident report and a debriefing and maybe changing something in the system so that mistake doesn't happen again. I can do that in myself. If
Right.
I, you know, there are still things that I do or say or, you know, actions or behaviors that uphold white supremacy. And if somebody points that out to me, that's them pointing out potential harm. Or to me, like, hey, you made a medication error. You just hurt someone by accident, right?
Right.
And that is not a personal attack on me. That is an opportunity for growth. And yes, it does make me feel a pit in my stomach when someone tells
Absolutely.
me that. Yes, it makes my chest feel tight. Yes, sometimes I need to go cry after I've heard this. I don't need to cry to that person, but I may have
Right.
some emotions about it. But it's also like, it's okay to be emotional about making a mistake.
Hmm.
Just don't put it on the person that you've harmed. Like if I make a
Right.
medication error, it would be ridiculous for me to go in and be like, I'm so sorry to the patient
Right.
and like, please hug me and, you know, comfort me after I harmed you. No, like, and so that's what I see white women doing a lot is I'm just
Hmm.
like you basically just made a medication error and just went in and asked the patient to comfort you after
Right.
you hurt
Exactly.
them. And
Exactly.
that's not how we do this. No, like you go to your peer group and say, I made a mistake. I'm upset. Like I could go to other nurses, be like, man, I made a mistake. I'm really upset. I need to cry. Right. And they'd be
Right.
like, oh shit, I've been there. I've made mistakes before too. And here's how I took accountability. And here's how I repaired that relationship with that patient or with the physicians or with whoever to rebuild that trust.
Right.
Um, or it may be, you know what, we're going to switch nurses because they're just not going to trust you anymore. And it's like, okay, well, that's the safest option for that patient. So sometimes people may disconnect from me after a mistake that I made. I may have people block me, and that's okay. They need to protect themselves, right?
Right. I think it's funny because in my first episode with Fatal Pros, I kind of talked about this idea of a lot of times people don't want to take accountability because um, they think that I've done a bad thing and it means I'm a bad person because
Hmm.
I've done this thing and people were saying, you shouldn't have done that. And I think they hear, you did a bad thing and you're a bad person. And I'm like, good people do bad things all the time. It doesn't make you a bad person. And I think
Right.
that's when people get defensive. And it's like, take out the whole good bad dichotomy thing and realize I'm a fallible human being who made a mistake. And my intention did not happen, and the impact of my intention was negative.
Mm-hmm.
And don't excuse it. Just be like, you know what? I didn't know and I'm sorry. Like, I had to do that. There is a term that I'm not going to say it. It's the G word.
Uh-huh.
You know which G word I'm talking about
Yep.
for Jewish people? Well, there's a shortened form of that word that we've been saying in the Black community for a very long time. And I just thought it was AAVE because everyone I knew who said it was Black. Jewish person, I said it, and a Jewish person said, "Oh, you can't say that, and this is why." And I go, "Okay, thank you. I didn't know. I didn't sit there and get defensive. Did it
Right.
hurt? Like you said, did I have a pit in my stomach? Was my heart palpitating? Like, yeah, because I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, I didn't mean to do that."
Right.
But I didn't go into defensive mode. I didn't try to explain it. All I said was, "Thank you for letting me know. I will never say that again." And that's
Yep.
what I did. It
Yep.
wasn't well, I'm not a bad person. They already know I'm not a bad person.
Yep.
And by me handling that with the grace that should be handled, that lets them know, okay, I can trust her. I can be around her as a Jewish person and trust her and know that she's not going to do that again. Because I didn't. To the point where I've gotten rid of songs that had it in it. And I
Mm-hmm.
love myself Fleetwood Mac, but I don't hear that song no more. I
Yep.
don't even play it. Because it costs it does nothing. It's like it's a slur. I don't want people to go around that shouldn't be saying the N-word to say the N-word and think it's okay. So I'm going to be just as diligent when I find out something is a slur, when I find out something is derogatory toward a certain group of people. Oh, okay, I'm not going to say it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you're still going to feel some type of way, but it's not, like you said, it's not on the person you offended to
Right.
comfort you. And I think a reason why a lot of white people have that problem is because they don't have a community to go back and say, I did something bad. Like, I have a
Mm-hmm.
community I can go back to is, I said that. Oh, girl, like you said, when you're with your nurses, girl, that happened to me. It's okay. You
Mm-hmm.
learn from it, and that's different. But white people don't build community the way other communities of color build community. And
Yep.
so you're sitting there like, well, I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And coupled by the fact that a lot of white people had Black people in their family, like not Black people in their families, but had families employ Black people to do exactly that, to comfort them when they did
Mm-hmm.
something they weren't supposed to do. The
And
mammy comes and comfort them. And so then you expect us to do the same thing. And it's like, no, I'm not doing that.
right. Exactly. Yep. And it's, when we talk about epigenetics, we talk like a lot of times in the Black community, I hear people talking about like epigenetic trauma. There's epigenetics in the white community too. And
Hmm.
I really think that there's epigenetics of white violence and that like feeling of ownership over people on, in white supremacy and like the right to comfort, the right to be comforted by
Right,
someone, even if we've harmed them,
right.
and the like the crocodile tears and all of that. It's so like I see it and I just cringe. I'm like, oh man, this is so ridiculous. Like, why do you gotta like, oh, I want so much better for women like me, right? Like,
Right.
I want so much better for you than this like performance shell that you're
But it's a
doing.
it's a muscle memory thing because,
Yeah.
well, every time I did this before, I got what I needed or I got what I wanted. So I'm just going to
Hmm.
continue to do it.
Yep.
And they kind of look crazy when they like do it in a Black space and we're all looking at them like, why are you carrying on like this? Like, what? Are you okay? Like, what's going on? And they're like, well, you're supposed to comfort me. Um, I'm sorry, but when God created me, He said nothing about I'm supposed to comfort white folks. So that's not in my job description. I'm sorry, I'm not doing that.
Hmm.
And it's like, what? How dare you? Well, how dare you just think I'm here to comfort and entertain you?
Right.
But society has taught all of us that, well, Black people are here to comfort and educate and entertain and all this other stuff. And we're like, no, we weren't. And we're not going to do it anymore.
Yep.
So, and I see a lot of talk about white people, y'all need to start building a community,
Mm-hmm.
because we're getting to the point in our society where unless you have a certain amount of money, they kind of don't really care about you either. And you're sitting here thinking that, oh, because I'm white, I'm going to be spared. And it's like, you're not going to be spared. If you have a disability, you're not going to be spared. If you're part of the LGBTQ, you're not going to be spared either. Like, and a lot of white people have something.
Mm-hmm.
You may have a hidden disability. You may have, you know, you may be part of the LGBTQ and not tell nobody. You could have any manner of things, and they're not really going to be receptive to you either, and your whiteness is not going to save you. Because
Yep.
after they get rid of all of us, Black people, brown people, some Asian people, Jewish people, Muslim people, then you're going to have, oh, okay, now the white people are left. Okay, well, the ones with the physical disabilities we don't need. And some of the people in your own community be like, well, but I'm white. Okay, but did you look in the mirror? You need physical accommodations. We don't want anything to do with that. And they're
Yep.
sitting there like, what? But, okay. Everybody tried to tell you that this would be coming and that you will be coming. They'll be coming for you soon, and you didn't want to hear it because you want to uphold whiteness and you want to hold the individualistic, pull me up by my bootstraps mentality. And it's like, but that wasn't meant for you.
Right.
It was meant for a certain type of white person, and you're not it. And
Mm-hmm.
so part of me is hopeful because I've seen a lot of white people kind of opening up and realizing like, oh wait, they gonna come for me soon. They gonna come for me too if shit goes left and the apocalypse happens. So maybe I need to do something different. I'm very happy to see that. But
Mm-hmm.
then on the flip side of that, we still have a lot of white people that are just going to double down and be even more gross and atrocious.
Yep.
And all I got to do is be like, well, your time is coming, and there won't be anyone to help you because we'll all be not here.
Right.
And however not here means, whatever
Yep.
not here means, there's going to be no one to help you. And the people you think are going to help you are going to be the ones that are going to put you in the situation where you won't be helped.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And TikTok is such a wealth of knowledge. And, one of the things that I really want white women to do is to start paying Black educators on the app. Like every month, $20 to one or two of the educators, and just keep that up. I have I have one that it just auto deducts every month for this one educator because I want her to have the funds available to do scholarship and stuff, to be able to bring other people in. I don't want it to be cost prohibitive.
Right.
And so, if I'm able, even though I'm on disability, I live with my parents, I don't pay rent. So I do have a little bit of disposable income. And
Right.
any of that disposable income is either going to a small business for like my skincare stuff, or it's going to educators. Like recently, I don't know if you follow Royal Star on TikTok.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
I do.
so
I do.
Kakai, he's in Oregon and he wrote a book. And so I got multiple copies of his book, and I've already handed out 6 copies of it because I will roll around my neighborhood and I just keep them in my pocket. And when I go and give eggs to the neighbors now, they get a
They get a
book with it.
book.
Mhm. And
I love it.
yeah, and so, it's called When and Where We Feel Safe, Distribute the Medicine. And so this is like a
Wait,
start.
hold it up, please,
Yep.
so we can. Thank you. Thank you. so
Yep.
people
And
can see it.
yeah, so if you guys go to Royal Star on TikTok, he has an email address that you can email him and you can get this. He's got two other books and then he's got courses as well. So like I've done a course with him and it's awesome. He's really helping white people to learn how to organize and to create community and networks that are not just about caring for each other, but also about healing from whiteness and having those difficult conversations. So, I've started at least my across the street neighbor, her and I have a lot of talks about, deconstructing from whiteness, but her and I also both have um, Black children in our lives. And even though my son's grown, I still, he's a kid in my mind, he may be 23
Right.
now, but he's still a kid. And so, her and I both are very cognizant about wanting to deconstruct, break down, do anti-racism work, and make this a safer space for our children,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, one more thing.
hmm
Tell us what happened with these green docs.
So, I had a long time ago, I had put up some videos about the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act because I had been in a few lives that were talking about medical racism, and it was late at night when I had done those lives, and so I couldn't remember the exact name of the act, and I had been calling it the Black Maternal Health Act, and so I had forgotten the momnibus part of it. So I made a video and tagged some of the women that I had been talking to in it so that they could understand what I was talking about and everything. Well, on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, these two white male OBGYNs who have a podcast did a podcast on the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act. So like they waited until MLK Day to do it. This act has been in the works for years. And then they had a congressman, white male congressman that is a sponsor of the bill. And the people who actually wrote the bill, Lauren Underwood, and then I'm so sorry, I forget the other woman's name, but Lauren Underwood, I went to nursing school with her. And
Oh, wow.
she's a congresswoman in
Right.
Michigan now. And she is on the Black Maternal Health Caucus. And so when I saw two white male physicians talking to a congressman, and the only reason I saw it is because they came and commented on my videos about the Black
Which is
Maternal Health
which is
Momnibus
what I
Act.
saw.
And
Right.
I was like, and they left the same comment, like to like 4 or 5 people on my thing. And most of them, they left the comment to Black women. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like, you guys have no idea about intersectional feminism. Like, you're doing this all wrong. And so, I made the 2 videos and then I went and left a few comments on their video. And my friend Nebraska came in, who was a congressional aide, and started making some comments about like, I find it very strange that you don't have Lauren Underwood or, any of these other Black women that started this talking about it. Like, you have 3 white men. Do you understand what this looks like? Do you understand how traumatic this is going to be for Black women to then click on and see 3 white men discussing their health? No. And so then I made the 2 videos. I tried to be very, cordial in the videos, but then they sent me a DM. And the direct message was from their social media manager saying, I'm the social media manager. It wasn't them. They're great guys, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I understand,
No
but
one said they weren't great.
right. I'm like, understandable, but here's my recommendation. And I gave them a full, very professional recommendation for free. And even told them, like, if they want to talk about this, I'm open to it. Like, this is what my degree is in, disability justice, which is social justice in healthcare. And so, like, I'll talk to them for free about where they're messing up here, but this is not it. And like, to the social media manager, I'm like, you should probably take some courses in intersectional feminism, maybe read this book. And look up J. Marion Sims, like, because when you
Don't
have
get me
three,
started on that man.
well, but that's when you have three white men discussing obstetrics on a podcast. I'm like, do you guys not understand the historical trauma that you are now, like, you're just perpetuating it by sitting here and having no women, like, not even a woman on there, but
Right.
especially not a black, like, they didn't have a woman on there, but they didn't even have like they didn't have a black woman who is being represented by this bill in there. And there are so many people on TikTok that have been championing this. She's having a baby has been, um, promoting the Black Maternal Momnibus Act for a long time. And so that was my thing, is like, if you guys are going to come on TikTok and start trying to get people to come to your page, then I'm going to need you guys to be promoting these women that are doing the work.
Right.
Like, or you're going to block me because I'm going to get annoying.
Thank you, Lindsey. Like, thank you so much. It's one of the reasons why I don't have a male OBGYN. My OBGYN is actually a black woman. And I stand by that. An hour and 30 minutes. We talked.
I could talk forever.
Me too. Me too. Lindsey, thank you so much for being the second guest on the I Got
Yeah,
a Lot of Things to Say podcast. We had a terrific conversation, and you are welcome back anytime.
that'd be great. I'd love to come back. I got a lot of things to say too.
So I'm Kia Dotson. That was Lindsey Freysinger. Thank you for tuning into this edition of I Got a Lot of Things to Say. Catch you later.